Hi, Nick here from Pods with Nick and James. Just a quick one before we get into this podcast. I want to say a massive thank you for the support that we've received since starting these podcasts. We thoroughly enjoy it and we look forward to creating more. If you want to have your say on any topics that we've discussed or suggest future topics, then you can do so at www.reddit.com/r/Nick and James Pods. And if you want to support us, you can do so for from as little as £1 a month, and you can do that at www.patreon.com/pods with Nick and James. Anyway, back to the podcast.
Hi, welcome to Pods with Nick and James. Hi, I'm James. Well, yeah, to be fair, we've done a few episodes. If you're listening, there's been a fair gap between our last one. I'm here with my lovely co-host. Well, with the main host, if I'm honest with you, Nick. Say hello, Nick.
Hey, how you going, guys?
Today, so when we were talking about which subject to do, it was at the time of some of the problems that were occurring in earlier this year to do with the Hamas Strait, and it made me aware that I don't quite understand why America has such beef with Iran and why they were going to war and why President Trump was just fine with just being like, yeah, let's assassinate leader after leader after leader. So I decided to look at Iranian history. Some of my sources include The History of Iran by Billy Wellman. That is my main source, if I'm being honest with you. Other ones that I gave a go were Iran by Walter Simmons, which is a very, very short read and gives some facts, but is a little bit underwhelming. And then on the opposite side of the scale, there's Iran and Modern History by Abbas Abnat, which was overwhelming and I wasn't able to get through before this podcast, so sorry, listeners. Iran is an incredibly culturally rich location, and we'll hopefully cover some of it in this podcast and have a little bit of a chat about it as well. So it's just Iran an overview, a historical overview, if anything. Nick, I know that you know a fair amount about history. I would, in the positive way, call you a history buff. What do you know about Iran? What's your basic knowledge of it?
I know that it's Iran isn't obviously the name that's always been used for it.
Absolutely
but
right.
We'll go over that a bit later, I think. It's 5,000 years inhabited. Before that, it was indigenous, like a few tribes, stuff like that. But the real civilization, population kind of situation started about 5,000 years ago.
Yeah, that's absolutely it. When Iran does have Iran, or the name which thank you for holding back. Like, I can tell you did that there. That was very polite. The name that most people give Iran is something that you will have heard in any film to do with Greece and in a number of game franchises. The Iran, although it's not exactly the same, for a huge amount of time, Iran went by the name Persia. Interestingly, when I've met several Iranians, several people from Iran, they've actually introduced themselves as Persian, which when I was younger, like threw me, but I kind of now get it.
So I can give you a little bit of a history lesson on the names if you like.
Oh, you know what? Yeah, definitely do. Any material you can give me is good, because despite listening to several audiobooks, like there's a lot of information to go through, and we are not going to be touching on everything. It's a very rich history. So give us a rundown of the names there, Nick.
So if we go back 5,000 years, Iran was populated by people that migrated in the Indo-European migration that came from the Central Asian steppes, right? They navigated down, they migrated down into what is Iran now, but at the time it was Medes and Persia, with two different countries that were side by side, very closely related. However, the people that came down, they called themselves the get the name right, the Aryans or the Arenians, and that's their oldest name. It's their name for their nobles. That's their name, right? However, the rest of the world, over their history, because of the way that their history has got to know them as Persia. And it was only in the mid-19th century, mid-20th century, that they decided that they would take back their name, what they called themselves, and ask that the rest of the world call them Iran. Ironically, Western culture associates Persia, the name, with beauty, culture, poetry. I mean, incredible history, rich, diverse history. And the Western world associates Iran with anxiety, unrest, and like war, essentially, because that's what the more modern history's been, isn't it? Although, of course, what they were trying to do by taking back their name was disassociate from the bloodshed of the Persian history and adopt the future vision that they saw at the time of being part of the wider world, which is a bit sad, really.
Whilst still being distinct from it.
Absolutely,
so like part of the wider world without kind of bowing to the Western powers.
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay. So nowadays, people do associate Iran with some levels of either oil, which is currently the natural resource which is giving that that's causing a number of problems, but also like religious fundamentalism because of the revolution of 1979, which we will come to in a minute. But weirdly, there are. It's interesting to note that Iran is incredibly distinct from the other Arabic nations, and has very much its own identity. Just out of interest, like, do you know, like, they follow a different brand of Islam than most of the surrounding nations? Do you know which one that is?
It's Shia, isn't it?
Absolutely right. They were one of the main components one of the main what's the word, where you take something, you don't just perpetuate it. When promote it. I'm going to use the word promote, but there's another word which is not escaping me here. They are one of the main proponents of Shiite Islam.
Yeah.
And specifically the 12-point Shiite Islam.
And it was actually Shah Ismail, wasn't it? Shah Ismail brought it into the country, yeah.
Oh my God! Okay, have you been doing your research? Because like I thought I was all right. You know what? Like, respect to you. Like, okay, yeah, absolutely right. Weirdly enough, he became a huge figure, but he claimed to be the hidden imam, or started claiming to be the hidden imam when he was 12 years old. But he went on to achieve a great number of things. But we'll come to him in a moment. As it stands, around 80%. Oh no, sorry, it's not 80%. 90% of Iranians identify as Shiite Muslims, with the other 9% identifying as Sunni Muslims.
Yeah, that's the what do you call like the rest of the world kind of Islamic faith, isn't it? The more Arab.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the more Arab state centric.
Yeah. So I don't know, although the books that I mentioned at the beginning of this podcast did cover some of the differences. There's been a huge amount of the Shiite Muslims put a lot of emphasis on the blood of Muhammad and on ancestry, and are very, in the past, have been very vocal in their disagreements with the decisions of several of the caliphs, who were some of the early leaders of the
almost
Islamic
their priests,
state.
Isn't it? They're their priests.
Yeah, but like that there are like that the archbishop would be like the like you've got an imam is like a priest, but a caliph is incredibly
higher up.
high.
Yeah.
Exactly, okay. much higher up. I don't know all the ranks in between. But yeah.
Do you know how they actually adopted? They ended up adopting Islam. Do you know what their religion was before?
Yes. Okay. Cool. I was going to get to this, but well done for bringing this up. It was something called Zoroastrianism.
Yeah.
Unless I've mispronounced that.
No, that's spot on. Yeah.
There is anyone of that faith listening, then I apologise.
I doubt it. It's very niche now.
It is, but what surprised me is that it does share quite a lot with the Abrahamic faiths. Like, because we've spoken a little bit in the past about Western religion. We've spoken a little bit about Eastern religion. It does seem that this one's just as geographically the country is in between. It seems like ideologically this one is very much in between. Like, it is monotheistic and it puts a huge emphasis on justice. I know the main prophet of it was somebody called Zoroaster. Annoyingly, I know it puts a huge amount of emphasis on rulers to not just rule and to be powerful, but to be wise, to make good decisions, and to practice justice.
Yeah.
I don't know enough of this. I don't know enough of their other things.
They were one of the most incredible empires pre-14. Well, in their early days, let's say between 600 BCE and 200 AD, they had a history that was replete with tolerance and acceptance for the lands that they claimed and they won. It was an incredible thing.
Absolutely. It's interesting how intolerant things have, but like I consider myself incredibly lucky that I am allowed to practice a religion of my choosing under the government, and I believe my faith to be the one that's right, but I love the fact that everyone has the right to choose, and that fits in with my personal ideology.
Yeah.
The fact that in the medieval times, everybody had the same religion as the lord or king that they were under seems mental to me.
Yeah.
And the fact that when a place got imagine Well, I can imagine. This is might sound incredibly insensitive, but like I have to imagine it because I'm not currently being repressed in this way. Although I know that the faith that I follow, Christianity, has also done this, which is I'm not super jazzed about. Imagine like your town gets sacked, the things that you put pride in get destroyed, your family gets harmed, some of whom may very well be killed, and then the person who's done all of this tells you that you're no longer the thing that you are, that you are the same as them in that you follow the same religion as they do.
Yeah, and you
Like,
must
that
do that,
seems-
otherwise you will die.
Yeah,
That's the
that
key
seems
part.
absolutely, and that just seems mental. Like, it just seems like an additional cruelty. Is the only word that comes to mind.
Yeah.
Like, and it also surprised me just the. Unfortunately, I haven't taken enough notes, but the fact that there have been huge, as Shiite Islam rose, it was resisted in some parts, but it just the sheer number of massacres between the two
sects,
two major branches, always surprises me. Like, it surprises me when I read about Protestants and Catholics killing each other.
Yeah.
This sort of thing, because of the number of people in the Middle East, like we forget actually that up until recently, Northern Europe was incredibly sparsely populated by comparison. Just the sheer number of people who have died over this is huge. But sorry, in answer to your original question, Zoroastrianism was the original one. And weirdly enough, when people look at Iranian or Persian history, there's a couple of different ways to do it, and you're absolutely right. Some people see it as the fall of the Persian Empire. Some people see it as the changing of the name. Some people see it as the pivotal point of the revolution of 1979. And some people just see it as literally pre-Islamic Persia and post-Islamic Persia.
One thing that strikes me about Iran throughout history is that it's been destroyed, shall we say, taken apart numerous times.
Yep.
But every time it was destroyed, its culture became part of the new regime.
Yes.
It never got forgotten, if you will. And the reason I say that is because if we go back as far as like Alexander the Great, right, marches into what was Persia at the time, and destroys it, just completely puts his own claim to it. He then pitches up in Babylon and makes it his capital, and marries a Persian princess, tells his nobles they must marry a Persian princess, and then wants to unite Greek culture and Persian culture to the point where when he dies at the age of 32, his entire empire fractures because he alienated all of his Greek compatriots because he wanted to unite Persia with Greece, whereas they came in to burn it to the ground and destroy it and make it not a thing anymore.
Or
but he
to
couldn't
rule over it as their masters.
Yeah, but he couldn't not adopt it in that way, and it wasn't the only ruler that did the same thing. I think if we look at the Mongols, like the Mongols probably did more to destroy Iranian or Persian heritage than any other empire in the world that attacked that part of the world. They potentially killed, I think it works out that they killed around 75 to 80% of all Persians/Iranians, like the people from that area of the world. They did so much to destroy their agriculture and make the land, is it affable when you can't grow on it anymore?
Well, I know it would be agronomy, but with you know what? That's a whole other set. Like their climate. Just you know, you said earlier that they had migrating tribes.
Yeah.
The tribes migrated because, with the exception of the northern provinces, a huge amount of the land is either mountain ranges or deserts, and
Yeah.
the tribes would go in between the two. So, like, they would go to cool places during the summer, and then they would come down. They'd go to the mountains in the summer, and then come down to the deserts in winter. Like, there was a huge amount of roaming, which is also weird because I've also been told, because of the mountainous nature of it, it's actually a really difficult country to get around, or at least in ancient times. You could walk, you could go across Europe.
Well, until Cyrus built the Royal Road.
Absolutely.
And when Cyrus built the Royal Road in, God, my memory's got to do me a favour here. 600 BCE, something like that.
BC.
He built a 2,500 kilometre road from one side of his empire to the other. That's how big the Persian Empire was. He literally, like, do you know Cyrus's history?
So I know that he is one of the few people literally included in the Bible who is called, he's the only non-Jewish person in the Old Testament referred to as a Messiah.
Yeah.
Because he freed
the Jews from Babylon.
He freed the Jews from Babylon. I know that. Did he reach all the way to Delhi? I know that.
Yeah, his land, in 20 years of his reign, he'd taken Lydia.
The birthplace of coins, or Western coins, as we now know them.
Yeah, he'd taken Lydia. He'd taken, where are my notes? What's the bloody country called? Think about when you make notes on the back of a crisp packet.
That's because we are a high-budget, high-end podcast.
Lydia, yeah, absolutely. Lydia, Ionia, and Bactra. So Lydia and Ionia are in the west, and Bactra all the way in the east. And across the entirety of his land, he made one road all the way from one side to the other, which was 2,700 kilometres long, that could be traversed on horseback through Iran, which, as James has already alluded to, was a very difficult terrain to traverse. But the entire road could be traversed in 7 days.
Which is crazy. Previous to that, it took 6 months.
Yeah.
Which, when you think about that,
That's
sheer difference.
Incredible.
I sound like a liar. If I'm wrong, readers, don't blame me. Blame Mr. Billy Wellman, writer of History of Iran, who states that emphatically. Is all I can say. But that's crazy.
He's got an incredible story, though, right? So Cyrus was the son of a vassal king of Persia and a Median princess, right? And his grandfather, who was the Median king, had alienated his armies and had he'd alienated his people so badly that they barely fought for him anymore. That when Cyrus said, "I'll be king," they all literally just went, "Yeah, we'll join him." Literally, like, barely any resistance. Just went, "Yeah, we're going to go join him because he's better than you."
Not
and he came and arrested, or I say arrested, that he came and captured his grandfather and united Medes and Persia into what was then Persia. The whole, united the entirety of Iran. He also created, as I said, he created the Royal Road, and in 20 years he did incredible things to the point where he marched on. He marched on Babylon.
He did.
He marched on Babylon, and the Babylonians basically went, "Thanks, we're going to open our doors." Like, we don't like what this guy's cooking. We'll have what you're having, and literally just let him in. And he, like, as part of his, should we say capture? I use that term very loosely because it wasn't much of a capture.
Did he didn't
sack the city? He didn't sack it. He gave them the Syrian cylinder. The Syrian cylinder, I think it's called the Syrian cylinder. And on that was a treaty that said, you will start building temples again. You will start worshipping the land, the religion of your land. Like, not our land, your land. You will start doing that again, because the Babylonian king had tried to abolish it and treated himself as like a god. And you'll release the Jews back to Jerusalem.
In the Bible as well.
Yeah. And the last thing he did was he released the Jews back to Jerusalem and gave them fair travel, like safe travel passage all the way back to Jerusalem. An incredible man. And as I said, in 20 years, built an empire that was insane. And that would continue to last for about another 200 years before it really started to be threatened.
Well, absolutely, because like he was an incredible man, but even his successors were surprisingly like competent. The fact that you've got another, I can't remember. Annoyingly, I can't remember what he did, just because he's not the guy who created it. But Darius.
Yeah, Darius the First.
Yeah, like followed some of that stuff up, and then you had.
He built their capital, didn't he? Persepolis.
Yes, that's right.
Persepolis. Yeah, I think I got that name right.
Shiraz. You know what? Regardless, like Cyrus produced something amazing, and when I've been doing some internet searches, like apparently the Persian Empire was the largest, which I find interesting, but it's also weird to note that the Roman Empire, which we all learn about, wasn't nearly as big or as powerful or lasted.
Well, it wasn't at that time. Like, it didn't go through the same kind of turbulence that Persia did. I know that Persia at its height was 40% of the world's population. It was an incredible number of about 40 or 50 million people, which is a large number for back in the time, of the known world were Persians. And they wouldn't really be seen as a threat by Rome, or they wouldn't see Rome as a threat during Persia's lifetime. And then Alexander...
Oh, sorry, I was traveling through time, so I was like comparing Persia at its height to the Roman Empire at its height, and saying, just like comparing Elon Musk's wealth now to the wealth of Mansa Musa in his prime, and like, and just kind of being like, look, this one, we know about this one, we don't know about this one.
Yeah,
we know
that's
about
fair.
the one which is
fair.
Know about the one which is more minor. Why don't we know about this one, which appears to be so much greater? Yeah. But sorry. Anyway, you were talking about Cyrus, and then we'll move on.
Yeah,
from
yeah.
Cyrus
So,
in a little bit.
Cyrus is like that. That's literally all I had written down about Cyrus. But first king of Persia, first king to unite the lands of Medes and Persia into one Persia, which I might point out they didn't call Persia. Everybody else called it Persia. They built the Persian. His son was Darius, wasn't it? Darius the First. He built their capital, which was Persepolis, and you can still visit that site now, and it's still got huge stone columns and massive ornate sculptures and stuff. But do you know who destroyed Persepolis?
Was it Alexander the Great?
It was Alexander the Great. He walked in and burnt it to the ground. He actually pitched up house in Babylon.
That's weird, because you're saying he married a Persian princess,
mm-hmm.
yet burnt their city to their like capital to the ground.
Yeah, I'd say capital. Use the term loosely. It was their cultural capital, but they didn't really, like you said, they kind of they travelled a lot. So they had centre points, but they didn't really have cities in the way that we know cities.
Yeah, they did in some cases. Like, although everyone loosely was under a regime, for the main point, for a lot of it, people lived by themselves. Like, well, okay, so like agronomy in Iran is it's not used so much, although it's a land which is rich in a number of natural resources, because of the lack of water and because of like the aridness of some of its deserts. Only 20% of Iran is arable. I don't know if that's using modern term things or if that's using ancient terms.
That's definitely modern day, because they had huge agriculture. They probably had about an extra 30% of the land that was arable when at their peak, and they had aqueducts that would bring water in.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. You beat me to it again. All right.
Sorry, mate. They had some of the most incredible infrastructure.
Yes. Yeah. What? I'll tell you what. Tell me, what were the names of those aqueducts?
I don't actually know.
Okay. So I've got Qanats, or I'm not sure if I can pronouncing this right. Kuraz, where it's literally an underground channel of carried water, because there is such changes in elevation in Iran. Although surprisingly, the entirety of Iran is also one of the highest countries in the world. So it is, just to hit our listeners with some basic facts. I think it's when it comes to modern day population, it is like both of these are like the 16th or 17th. Okay, so size-wise, it's the 17th largest country in the world, just based on its land mass, and by population, it's also the 17th. So we considering that, just to put this in context for our listeners, there's over 200 countries. If you're in the top 20, then you're a big deal. Like, so, and yet, and like they had agriculture through the use of this technical system, which is still used today. The Qanats would lead water from high up mountainous regions into places, into like settlements and regions where there was no other water available. And because it was underground, it's not hit by the sun, it doesn't evaporate, you don't end up losing a huge amount as a result, which it's absolutely ingenious. And it doesn't surprise me that some of these underground canals, viaducts, lead into reservoirs which are still used today and date back over 2,500 years. Like, I get impressed if something is 400, 500, 700 years old. If it's still in use and still being used for its original purpose, I'm impressed. So something being over 2,000 years blows my mind.
Yeah, absolutely. So do you know that, as I said, about 30% of their arable land was lost because the Mongols destroyed... The Khans. The Mongols destroyed their viaducts and aqueducts, and that caused so much of their land to become arid that, and even now, like, it's not come back. They've not been able to get it back and arable, which is a shame, because it meant that it isolated them even more into more and more remote locations in order to be able to have settlements.
Absolutely.
But a little known fact about the Mongols is they were also another one of these cultures that came into their country and tried to destroy their Persian heritage and ended up adopting it.
Yes. Yeah. With the accession, which I also love the fact though that even after the bloodlines have changed, you still find the term Khan, or the last name Khan, like several hundred years after the Mongolians have disappeared.
Yeah.
Like, and I also find it interesting that a huge amount of Iranian or Persian culture was to do with like horses and nomad traveling with horses,
Yeah.
which seems really similar to what we're told about the Mongols. And so it's just, I don't know, the fact that you're absolutely right. The two cultures had a huge effect on each other.
Yeah.
What other stuff did the Mongols like take or adopt from Iran?
They adopted their they started speaking some of their language, and they started to read their poetry. I know that they were big on their poetry, and what else? No, there was something significant. I can't remember. No, it's gone. Didn't they? No. I know that the grandson of Genghis.
So Genghis Khan's grandson, isn't he the one who defeated Persians and invaded? And I know that you're absolutely right. They loved the Persian poetry, and a Persian poet whose name I cannot remember actually got an audience with the grandson of Genghis Khan.
Yeah.
As a result of that. So it just, generally speaking, the Persians, despite being nearly wiped out by the Mongol invaders, somehow had a huge effect on them culturally, despite only 20% of them remaining and losing a huge amount of their land to these infrastructure destructions.
Do you know what the one of the most famous things that Persians were known for in warfare?
So I've said horses, but I imagine that's not what you're going for.
No,
I don't know.
It's on the line. It's just something that genuinely, when they eventually started to face Rome, they terrified the Romans with a specific technique. That
is it the immortal unit, or is that a different?
No,
that's a different kettle of fish that we'll get to.
No, it was the Persian shot. They would ride on horseback, gallop away from the enemy, turn and shoot behind them.
Yeah,
and it was devastating.
Just hit and run tactics,
absolutely.
And the fact that you could do that.
You could do it on horseback. They were the first culture to be able to do that on horseback, and it just decimated parts of the Roman armies. They were the first nation to capture a Roman emperor, and I can't remember specifically which. I think it was the Parthians actually. By this point, the same culture, the same country, just a different name. They captured one of the Roman emperors and used him as a footstool to get on and off his horse.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. That's something. That's something like, this is my rival. He's now my footstool.
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. Oh my god, that's amazing.
So,
that does make sense to me, because in a part, like, although Roman cavalry was a thing, you know from the legionnaires that their main, like, a lot of their thing was fairly short sword, the gladius. Large interlocking shields. But the problem with that is that you are limited in how quickly you can move and how quickly your unit can move. If you've got a load of horsemen who can stand, shoot, run away, stand, shoot, or shoot whilst on the move. Like I can't. Okay, so I'm not a very fit person, but like in the ancient world, you know, like soldiers were required to be fit, but they also didn't have access to the same technology that we had. They wouldn't have had access to the same types of food that we have. Like they would have had other health problems, and yet, like I imagine I couldn't catch a horse. I doubt they could. You know?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Like, all right. Okay.
Do you know one of the most incredible things about the Persian army, though?
Okay, is this one the immortal?
So it's got something to do with that. So obviously they had their creme de la creme, which was their immortal god. But something most incredible that they did, which leads back to this whole tolerance thing that we were talking about before. Anytime they invaded a land and took it over, they didn't impress their regime on that land. They could keep their religion, they could keep their beliefs, they could live the way they always had done. As long as they paid homage to the crown, then they were free to carry on, as long as they provided troops, which meant that the Persian army was one of the most diverse and multi-skilled armies ever to grace the earth.
Is this the Kizilback unit?
It had everything. They had
right.
Asian soldiers with everything. Like if they were highly skilled in longswords, right? They would stay as skilled longswordmen, right? If they were skilled with a bow, they would remain their bowmen. Yeah, and they had so many different places to get troops from, and every time they had another battalion or another legion of troops come in, they would always have a different skill set, which made them one of the most difficult armies to battle, because they basically had the Swiss Army knife of armies.
Yeah, so like, and they would have known. So like, it's interesting that the Persian army became that, like, which is fantastic. I know when the Greeks were fighting them early on, like, so we've all heard the story of the 300.
Thermopylae.
That happened because of like Greeks' use of tactics, and there are other examples where the Greeks have
That was the Spartan use of tactics, because the Greeks are idiots. They're only good with money, and they weren't even very good with that.
They introduced tactics, whereas apparently the Persians early on, just literally used numbers in order to overwhelm their foe. However, from what you've said, it sounds like they developed, included loads of other things, and then all of a sudden had this array of troops at their command.
They certainly weren't. They certainly weren't the oppressive force that some cultures were. They weren't known for that. They were very clever. So, you mentioned Thermopylae there, the 300 Spartans, the Battle of Thermopylae. So do you know, after they lost, obviously, I think it was a million troops to those 300 men, before eventually overcoming Leonidas and killing him. But do you know what they did after they lost that million troops? You'd think, oh, that's a huge dent in their side, and they've lost a load of Greek land, and they're going back with their tail between their legs. No. They didn't even re-invade. They didn't even bother. What they did was they manipulated Greece from the inside out. They used coin, turned the Greek city-states against themselves. They turned Sparta against Greece, and they turned Greece against Sparta, just through the use of money. Until eventually, Greece signed the Peace of something, what the bleeding hell is that called? The Peace of Antalcides, which Artaxerxes dictated. Artaxerxes said, I will have these Greek regions, I think it was Cyprus and a number of other regions, and then the rest of Greece can govern itself. I don't care.
Yeah. although he did expect the places where he owned to accept his rule and there's this term
his sovereignty.
Sovereignty, but it's when you become a suzerain state or something. What's the
the suzerain state.
It annoys me. What surprises me is what I found interesting from some of these accounts is the reason why we've all heard about Sparta and about Athens is because those are the ones that resisted the Persian rule the most, where a number of the other city-states, I don't have their names, I know I should know listeners, and I apologize. A number of the other states just went, yeah, sure, and we're fine with it.
Yeah.
If you're being horribly oppressed, it would be more than two other states that would do it. And although as a result of their resistance, I know that the Persians did sack Athens at one point.
Yeah.
Which, if everywhere else is bowing to your rule and this one state is literally saying, no, we're not going to follow you, you're nothing. Tactically, that it makes sense, but obviously it's still a huge loss of life for that. But
the Persian people are very closely related to the Greeks.
Yes.
Biologically, they came from the same migration, right? They all migrated in that direction at the same time from the same places. Just the Greeks settled in Greece, and the Persians and Medians settled in that area. People think that because Iran is a Islamic state, that it's always been an Islamic state, but it's not. It was invaded by the Arabs in about the 14th or 15th century, and that's when it became an Islamic.
There were bits. Ishmael was before the 14th century, but you are absolutely right. It wasn't like it didn't happen overnight. And it was, so I found it interesting that out of all the surrounding countries, the Ottomans, to my knowledge, and I'm sorry if I'm wrong, didn't conquer all of Persia at any one point. And additionally, during the same time as the Ottoman Empire, so the Byzantine Empire didn't. So sorry, listeners, we're now skipping from ancient history to medieval history, but the Byzantine Empire didn't conquer them entirely. The Ottoman Empire didn't conquer them entirely. And then even British colonialism, when we were running rampant across the world, never conquered them entirely. And I find that interesting that in the past they've had this huge effect on other cultures, and after a while it just seems like they just stopped getting fully defeated. But we'll come to modern history in just a minute. We won't horribly overrun, but we'll get to it in a second. Is that different to what you've read?
No, it's exactly right. Excuse me, coughing. Yeah, they've never been destroyed. If you think about the different places around the world that have been, you think the Babylonian people don't exist anymore. They were taken by
ancient Babylon.
Yeah. Mesopotamians gone.
It's now
Sumerians gone. Never found again. The Assyrians gone. They have always managed to retain their heritage, managed to retain their history, and their culture.
Absolutely. It's interesting that in ancient times, all the way up until the golden age of Islam, Zoroastrianism was like a key part of their culture. And they held on to it for a surprising amount of time when all the other nations around them were fully accepting of Islam. It took them longer to get hold of it. and then it seems to be a couple of rulers who then, rather than resisting the change of Islam, decide to take a particular part of it. I think it might have been... No, it's not Sadiq. It's not Nadia Khan. That's a whole other thing. There are a number of interesting kind of leadership crises which have happened over the years in Persian history. Like, there are tales of somebody who looks like a member of the royal family killing a member of the royal family and then usurping that place and usurping the throne through that. Yep. There's another tale of somebody called Nadia Khan, who was a general, undermined the king to the point where the king abdicated, and then you've got the king's young son on the throne, with basically this general being the de facto ruler. And then the general literally just calls for the nation and says, okay, we need to elect a new ruler, because... doesn't give a reason, but says we need to elect a new ruler, and then somehow unanimously everybody votes for him.
Yeah, and
as if that's not a staged coup.
No, exactly. Is that the final king that ended up running from city-state to city-state, trying to raise an army to fight against his defectors, and ended up being...
No, that was later, but
okay.
Yeah, that's another one. Yeah, it's just there's been... Yeah, there's a huge amount of history here, and it really surprises me just how little I knew and how little I still know. But I love... Okay. Oh, something I haven't covered.
Makes me... Go on.
Okay, so during the time of Cyrus, going back to ancient history, the term King of Kings would be used to describe the King of Persia, because they had to say that they were king of both the Aryans and the Persians and all the other lands, and because of there was no separation of church and state, Zoroastrianism was in there. They literally had to appear as to be a divine figure. So they would have huge titles of like Keeper of Justice, Lord of this place, Conqueror of this place, like they're...
It's like they're reading their CV out.
Yeah, exactly. So so it's like the Daenerys Targaryen thing.
Yeah.
Where Queen of
the Seven Kingdoms, the
Andals and the First Men. Yeah, all of that lot. They literally had that, and I really should have saved one. Again, which one was it? I regret not saving it, but one of them had this title, which was literally a CV, and it was a CV of awesomeness, and it was just like that's brilliant, Like, I just kind of thought it does make it hard to argue with someone when
this is the king. Know. Oh yeah, you say it's the king. What's he ever done? Well, he's actually the king because he did all of this stuff. Yeah, you know what? That's fair.
yeah. Like, that's it.
But we're just the king of this river. Like, you can have it, mate. Don't worry.
Exactly. Like, I'm king of this hill over here. My family's lived there for generations, and it's just like, yeah, just kind of like the one-upmanship.
Yeah.
I think it's more than one-upmanship, but there is an element to that.
It's about imposing as well, isn't it? It's about saying, I have done all this stuff, and like to try and usurp against me, or to try and lead against me, would be a fool's errand, because like, look at all the things I've done.
Yeah. Or look at my lineage. My ancestors are done this. I know exactly who I am. Who are you?
Yeah.
Like, okay. So another thing that we haven't covered, the leader of Persia was often called a Shah,
Yeah.
So like that's so just as we've heard of emperors, kings, pharaohs, that's one. That's another word that we all need to add to our vocabulary if you're going to learn some history. Shah of Persia.
And they still bounce between having shahs and having heads of states now, don't they?
Well, they do. What really surprises me is that from the time, like, so Cyrus the Great was incredibly ahead of his time. And like there are the Ottomans were more so around the time of the Ottoman Empire, the Ottomans get their hands on muskets and become more advanced than the Persians and are able to kind of like dominate the battlefield mostly through the use of cannons and muskets, although again the terrain of Iran and the knowledge of the people there kind of saves them in a huge number of instances. Like what's the right word here? Society-wise, it's during this medieval period that they don't have very many reforms, and maybe it's the effect of the Mongolians' attack, which destroyed their agriculture and their infrastructure, which then means they start falling behind the other nations around them. And although they never come, there is corruption in the court. There is a huge number of incidences.
They never really get back on a stable footing, do they? And that's why I said the Mongols probably did the most for crippling and ruining what was once an incredible empire.
That's it. So they don't have an empire anymore, but they never fully fall.
No,
like
they just become. The world starts to see them more and more like that annoying thing that's still there in the back of their mind, and it's almost insulting, and it is insulting, to be thought of in that way when once upon a time you were as great as you were. But I think another reason why there's not really been much stability in this modern day is probably more to do with the Brits and the Americans than anything else in the world.
Yeah, we'll jump forwards to that. Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, so after the time of so the Ottoman Empire existed until post World War One, but pre World War One, when Iran was still a separate country from the Ottoman Empire and was a Shiite Muslim nation rather than a Sunni Muslim nation, when it was still very fine. It was still very culturally distinct. Another point that I haven't brought up yet, it's the Silk Road between Asia and Europe runs through it. The Suez Canal connects to the Persian Gulf, which gives them, which just gives them a huge amount of influence because their agriculture has been destroyed. Like they survive through trade, through natural resources, but they keep on getting bad deals. And unfortunately, when it comes to from about the 17th century onwards, the 1700s onwards, so the 18th century and 19th century, that's when the European powers, and unfortunately it reads exactly like the stereotypes that you get to, and unfortunately a number of these stereotypes to do with England and what we've done in the past are based on fact. Not all of them are 100% accurate, but in this case, unfortunately it is. The Russians, basically the Russians and the English were the two empires and countries who were constantly meddling in Persian and Iranian affairs, to the point where you guys are good at growing tobacco. okay, well, the Shah's run out of money. He's looking for money in order to create new infrastructure in the country. He's going to sell the rights to all of the tobacco grown in Persia to an individual English colonel. Like it unfortunately it just reads terribly, and then it's like, oh, there's an uprising. Who's that's been financed by? Oh, it's been financed by the Russians. Oh, there's another uprising. Who's that been financed by? Oh, it's been financed by the English. Like, unfortunately, Persia falls behind to the point where their first newspaper, I think, is 1836, and that was started by somebody who had to go abroad, was Oxford educated, and then was like, oh, newspapers, that's a great idea. I'll bring those back to Persia. Their first bank was set up with help of the British. And unfortunately, once again, the moment we've got our hands in something, our government seems to have a bit of say in those financial matters.
Yeah.
So it just seems like time and time and time again, their ruler looks for money to finance a new project, gets a loan from a foreign investor, and then that foreign investor guts the country time and time and time again. Like, I grew up with there's kind of like that negative stereotype of the angry Iranian, the angry Arab, the angry Middle Eastern person. And it's annoying that every time you open the history book and read through, you learn why. Having said that, there was one incident where I wasn't entirely behind it. There was at one point Russia had an embassy in Iran, which in the 1800s there was somebody claimed political asylum in the Russian embassy. So some people, I can't remember which group exactly, riled up the crowd, but they riled up the crowd. The crowd stormed the building, and they didn't just take the person back. They killed every single Russian diplomat and member of staff in that building, and the head Russian diplomat was thrown out of a second-story window, and then his body was mutilated by the crowd.
Mm.
So during this time, the people knew that they were being taken advantage of by foreign powers. They did not like it at all. And whenever they resisted it, it just seemed to make the situation worse. Sorry, that's my little rant. Apologies, listeners.
It's a fair assessment. I just hate every time we get to this point in podcasts, we're always like, there's Britain doing its bit again, and like here's the Western world getting involved. You know.
Yeah. Like, when we didn't even need to.
No,
we didn't even.
Well,
we had our own issues.
We came along and we went, oh, they've got oil. Oil's really good. We'll use that. And
it's always a British company, and the head of the company is always a member of the British military.
Mm-hmm.
It's just it just seems to be, you could either be an entrepreneur in London, but if you wanted the largest profit margins, you joined the English army, went abroad, scouted out for business opportunities, then went there later under the guise of business, and then gutted it. Sorry. Yeah, it just like that. You're absolutely right. The original oil company in Iran before it was nationalized
was British owned.
Yep, it was, because it became the National Iranian Oil Company, NIOC. Before that, it was the Anglo-Iranian Oil Company. It's literally in the name.
Yeah.
literally in the name. And oh my god! And today it's part of BP.
Yep.
Oh shit. Okay.
Well,
Right, but yeah.
I think considering we didn't think we were going to fill an hour.
Yeah. Yeah. No, okay. Just really quickly, as political, just like with all other nations, political power from the rulers slowly but surely decreased over time as the country was invaded by other nations. That power decreased. Political intrigue further decreased the power of the monarch, which was at one point absolute within Persian society. During the time of the revolutions, they were mostly able to hold it together, but with the country constantly being taken advantage of and exporting its raw minerals rather than finished goods, it became kind of like poorer and poorer despite its natural wealth and resources. It got to the point where the Shahs, just one after another, became kind of like more and more puppet kings. They were deposed. I think it was in the early 20th century, and replaced with a form of democracy, which in turn was overthrown in 1979, which then the new regime, which is kind of a theocracy, which was a theocracy at the time, and I believe is still one today, kind of is able to do the things that it does and puts the regimes and decisions that it does into practice because 90% of the population in Iran are Shiite Muslims, and I don't think every single one of them supports the policies, but if you've got a 90% majority claiming to be the religion of the government, and I don't know how much of it is forced and how much of it isn't, you will be able to put through everyday policies based on religious texts, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, and I just literally killing an individual leader isn't going to change that. Destroying the regime above them isn't going. I don't know how horrible and how many massacres they've done. I've looked too much at ancient history, not enough at modern history. But like the current situation with Iran, their hatred of foreign invaders is based off of what both sorry, I didn't mention them, but the French, the English, and the Russians have done to their country for over the past couple of 100 years. Is because the new power that is trying to manipulate them is America, and as a result, they historically, I imagine their children are raised on stories of how foreign powers have come in and exploited their country in the past. Understandably, they don't want it to happen again.
Yeah.
Right. Sorry. There we go. We'll end it there.
I also think there is a lot of bitterness at the fact that we do this. We come into their country and attack their peoples, and yet we have no idea who they are as a nation, like who they were and who they are. Like, what is their culture? What is their history? We don't know anything about them, and yet we think it's okay to just go in and try and steal their resources.
But it's this blurred line between private enterprise and state.
Yeah.
Like I find it interesting that so there used to be the guys used to be in my mind it used to be religion. Like it used to be, oh, okay, well, we're going to go over here and kill these people and take their resources because they're heretics, because they're infidels, because they belong to this other thing. Then it kind of became, oh, we're going to go over here and we're going to take their stuff, we're going to kill them, we're going to oppress them financially. Oh, it's just good business, and this isn't even our government. This is a private enterprise, and then it's just like, no, it's not. The East India Trading Company. It wasn't a. Trading company doesn't cover it, you know. But
Yeah.
you know what? That's one we'll do at another point. We'll do
Absolutely.
the East India Trading Company at some point. Right. Thank you very much for listening, listeners. This has been Pods with Nick and James. Apologies that once again my own attention span and stuff means that things unravel a little bit, but Iran, Persia, place of incredible culture, beauty, rich history, never brought up in the media, always just backlash to the current political things. A lot of it seems like they have good reason. I don't necessarily agree with mob violence. I don't necessarily agree with with a lot of the decisions that the current regime has made on the people. But once again, I'm aware. I'm now simply aware of some of what I didn't know. And on that, I bid you good night. Good night, guys.
Good night, everyone.